Thinking Basketball Podcast. My name is Ben. Welcome back to part two of our 25 under 25 draft that we do every year. If you missed part one, you got to go back and hear part one, first of all, to get the first 9 picks so you're caught up to date. And secondly, so you can hear our little preamble about criteria so I don't have to do it again. Basically, you have to be 24.87 years old right now to qualify for this episode. That's everything you need to know, along with the fact that we're drafting as if the playoffs started tomorrow. What can a player give us today versus the typical long-term prognostication? Let's see if I can speak English better than when we recorded part one. It was an adventure for me. I mean, it is my native language, but who knows? And Cody, I will say, I'll recap where we left off in a second. I don't know if you have any thoughts getting to step away this time and, reflect on the players and the discussions we've had. But to me, the players coming up in part two was just significantly harder. It gets harder because the players get closer together in a lower tier of impact later on. But even just this next tier of players, there's going to be a lot of discussion here.
Yeah. So I think a good way to think of that is if you look at the number 1 guy, and then you take the number 10 guy, the difference between them has to be wider than the 20th guy and the 50th guy that we might be talking about here. I don't know, the number of guys you can talk about are so close and equal that it kind of becomes a preference, philosophical. I don't know, just stroking our philosophical beards and being I bet you this guy would be quite good in the playoffs. And I've seen some wonderful things on this team. And I think that's what's going to happen a lot in the second half of this episode.
Yes, you're going to be stroking the beard quite a bit. And that's a good way to put it. Although did you list 50 players? I only listed, I guess I only listed 42 players.
Okay. I have, because my way to do it is I started by putting an X next to everyone that I might consider. And I have an X, next to exactly 50 players, Ben.
Okay, there you go. You weren't joking about that. I thought that was some classic Kodak hyperbole, but
never.
No. Right on the dot as always. Okay, so last time we had, I am picking on the odds. Cody's picking on the evens. I picked first. I picked Victor Wembanyama. He picked Anthony Edwards. I picked Jalen Williams, who probably should have gone first. Then we have Chet Holmgren, Tyrese Maxey, the biggest debate, the biggest point of contention, which I think makes some sense because he's really struggled to start the year and his statistical profile is somewhat terrible, and Philadelphia is just legitimately terrible. The situation is a disaster. Who knows if they can turn it around? What's their record right now as of recording this? 7-18? I mean, I'm not even sure. They could play great basketball the rest of the way, and I'm not even sure they could sort of scratch that far over 500. That's Philly. Yeah, go ahead. You're going to add something to that?
To be fair to Philadelphians, there are 5 teams that have won fewer games than the 8 games that Philadelphia has won. Washington has won 3 games, Ben. They are 3-21.
Is that the bar we're setting for the 76ers? Just be better than the Wizards?
Well, I mean, in terms of watchability, I still think I might rather watch the Wizards than the 76ers. It's not even an anti-Sixers thing. I just really like watching that Wizards team.
That's true. Cody, your internet problems today are throwing me off. I think you're in the middle of a blizzard. Is that right?
Oh no, what's happening? Am I clipping in and out?
A little bit. Yeah, it's throwing me off, and you're freezing, making hilarious faces every time you freeze. It's great. MK91 from the comments is letting us know. Thank you for the help, by the way, in the audience. If you're streaming along live as a member, thank you. This is amazing. The 76ers are 8-16 and only 1.5 games out of the 10th spot for the play-in, which I guess is the optimistic way to look at it. They're in the East and accessing playoffness. Well, as Cody would say, not playoffs. The 10th seed is not the playoffs. I don't know how you get in the playoffs if you're not in the playoffs. You could play this play-in to get into playoffs. But yes, playoff-adjacent access is within reach.
All right, we have 16 guys to talk about, so it took an hour and 12 to get through 9 last time. So how about instead of trying to pick on me publicly here, we get rolling here, Ben. We can have this fight another day.
Okay. I think it's your pick. Here, man, you put me on blast. I think it's your pick with the even pick at number 10. Zion. I didn't even finish, Cody. Paolo was finished 6th. Paolo was picked 6th. Evan Mobley went 7th. Franz Wagner, the other Magic player with the oblique injury right now, went 8th. And then speaking of injury, we had Zion Williamson at number 9. And now it is to you, Cody, at number 10. Anyone in their 24 and under basketball reference season is eligible. The world is your oyster. There's like 100+ players you could choose from. Who's it going to be?
How long did we spend talking about Victor Wembanyama last time? Well, like when we brought him up, like how long was that segment? That had to be.
Well, here's the thing. That was
12 minutes.
We talked. I know, but we talked for over an hour, and I at this point have kind of forgotten the first half of that podcast. I don't even remember. Like we did talk about Victor Wembanyama and Anthony Edwards for a while. I remember 2 points from the entire thing. So, are you suggesting that you want to talk about this player for 15 minutes?
No, I'm saying that's like, wow, we're gonna have to. I don't know. Maybe there's less to talk about here. Maybe we're just going to be in complete agreement with all of this. When we ended last episode, the guy had at number 10. It was a little bit more. I have complicated feelings. Not that I don't have complicated feelings about everyone. I actually have 3 guys right now that I'm saying I have really complicated thoughts about, but I still think that there's something about them that draw me to them, right? They're the sirens on the rock singing their beautiful song.
Stop teasing us. Who's it going to be? I'm dying.
I just love my injured players, Ben. I'm taking Scotty Barnes at 10.
Well, to paraphrase you from last episode, thank you for doing this for me because I had no idea where to draft Scotty Barnes. Once again, I'll give you the floor because I think he is a fascinating player to discuss.
I think that's exactly it. Like you look at the Raptors build, and again, the Raptors are another one of these teams that aren't particularly good. And after they just like cleaned house, right? Siakam's not there, OG's not there for Van. Like no one that he's played with in the past is really there, and he's kind of leading this team where like Grady Dick is knocking down a bunch of shots and RJ Barrett's kind of exploding and coming onto the scene. You have this trifecta of mediocrity, Ben, and it's all kind of very interesting. And Barnes is just super overtasked. He has so many skills that you just want on a high level team next to other high end offensive talent. Like you see him, if you put him onto a high end offensive team or even a high end defensive team, he's not taking anything off the table. Would you prefer for somebody like that to be a better shooter? I mean, yeah, obviously you always want guys to shoot a little bit better, but in terms of like the secondary pass, the guy tries stuff. Like when it comes to passes, you can't be like, you know what, Scotty Barnes doesn't go for it. No, he's winding back and he's going for the home run every time he throws a pass, and I appreciate that. He loves to grab and go. He's got a really high motor on defense. You know, he can defend the rim. He's one of these huge forward type of guys that maybe you could slot to a 5 spot in some situations. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of warts like you're probably going to bring up and we could talk about here, but the other stuff, I don't know. I think it's really fascinating as a guy that like, you know, you have your jar full of marbles and you need to fill up the volume as much as possible. And he's just the water that goes in the rest of it and just fills it all up, Ben.
I have a lot of questions.
Okay.
Let's start with what you alluded to at the top. Do you want him being this sort of like primary playmaker role that they're using him in? I mean, you turn on the games and he is the guy who is trying to captain the ship because they have no other guys out there who know how to drive a ship. That's basically what's happening. So on one hand, it's really cool that he has that skill set. And obviously he's a good playmaker. Maybe you could say he's a fantastic playmaker for his size. Cause I mean, he's like a legit 6'8", 6'9", and he does have that big playmaking mold, but you know, there are some warts. We can get into more of them, but obviously the shot is not very good. Yeah, he's not like a tremendous scorer. He's not going to put a ton of pressure on you in pick and roll game and things like that. So I think I start with that. It's like, it's cool that he has those skills. I think you and I both would like those skills in a situation where he's the tertiary option or he can create on the second side next to a really good offensive player. He doesn't have to play this role, but let's start there. Like how overburdened is he and how much should we pay attention to this sort of experiment that he's running?
Well, I think he's extremely overburdened. Like, I don't even think we're definitely not talking about a guy that I think should be a primary offensive player. I don't even think he should be the secondary offensive player. I think he has the skill set offensively and does the kind of things where if you have 2 other guys that are really able to run the show, then he's going to be able to thrive at what he does. I mean, we see the Cavaliers, for instance. You just really adjust with having Mobley bring the ball up, run a lot of delay action that way. You kind of push it, and it opens the court so much more because of his shooting woes, right? Like if you have Barnes that's able to do that with some other guys that can kind of fly around him and take care of the other offensive burden, I think that would be ideal for him. Then I think he could put more of the effort into his defensive end, where I actually like his potentially even more as just kind of a jack of all trades. You can rotate down to a little bit of second side rim protection, super switchable. Like, he ranks very highly. I think Basketball Index has like some statistics that break down just your switchability. And he's a guy that defends basically every position, right? So I think the defensive potential maybe interests me more, even more than like the passing stuff that I like to see.
All right, here's my other big question with Scotty B.
Mhm.
There's a little bit of sort of like Dwight Howard, if you will. There's a little bit of like a goofiness to the entire process. And maybe it's just because he's on a team that's young and they're not winning. But go back to his rookie year. We did a profile on him, and he obviously has this defensive motor inside of him. You can't really teach that, I don't think. I don't know how to get somebody to be as active at his size as he can be. But then I turned the games on this year. He's playing this like, point Scotty, point forward role, and he's got the offensive juice all dialed up. And there are a lot of possessions where I'm like, oh, okay, Scotty Barnes is kind of like pseudo asleep on the backside. He might be talking to the ref, he might be talking to his man. Even on offense, he's trying silly things sometimes, and if it doesn't work, he gets really frustrated. Do you understand what I'm getting at, Cody? I'm not trying to be armchair psychology. I'm just saying,
sure,
there's something about that relative to his skill set that I can't quite make out when you turn on a team and they're 12th in the conference or something.
I do think that the like psychology of players is like a great unexplored part of analytics that maybe one day we'll start cracking a little bit more. Like, I think having the right type of mentality on a team is super important, but I'm not going to sit here, like you just said, we're not going to sit here and like really try and crack into that with Scotty Barnes. I do think in terms of like, you go into a team and you kind of just know, like, what are you playing for? Like, I wonder how that is psychologically for you every day. Like, if you throw him into a better context, you throw him into a playoff type of team, like, I don't know. There's nothing that tells me he wouldn't be able to turn it around and be like, all right, this is great. I'm going to really shore up all of this kind of stuff to make sure I'm as successful as possible. So I don't know. Like I said, lots of complicated feelings offensively. Like, every time I see him try and create, I don't know if he can get by guys. Like, I just don't think he has the handle or even like the first step to do that. Like, he's not somebody in the half court that I really trust to get like an easy basket for himself really at any point. But again, that's the whole put him next to some other high-end talent, and I think you leverage a lot of those skills a lot more.
I mean, he's a subpar shooter, which is a little bit of a concern. To your point, he's shooting he's in the 46th percentile on true shooting on his drives. At least he finishes well at the rim, but for a big player who has that like not great shooter, but he can have some downhill basket pressure because he is a tremendous athlete. I just want that number to be much higher. It's complicated for me. I have him in this range. Mm-hmm. He is in the discussion for me. I would not have picked him here. I have him listed a little bit lower on my board, but I think he's a really complicated player. And I think he's complicated enough that we have a lot of comments in the audience. And I just want to even throw some of them out there. Andy Cromer saying, I feel like it could be really valuable on a certain team in a playoff context, but he doesn't have like a single superpower. It's hard to identify what that is. And then another comment, I'm not going to try to say this name, I'll mess it up, but is Scotty a super dimes and defense kind of player at his peak? The ability to pass, connective tissue, versatile, switchable defender. There's a lot there, but I just still have questions. It's just very interesting to watch this unfold anytime you tune into one of those games.
This is why I ended last podcast by saying the next few guys are my Avril Lavigne picks. Like, they're extremely complicated, Ben. Like, there's something about each of them that I'm just like, I'm not sure, which is why they're not top 10. I guess Barnes is literally top 10.
He's literally 10th, yeah.
But we had like a strong demarcation between the top 9. Like, I felt pretty confident about that. So,
Yes, I don't want to overstate it, but it does feel like there's that group is comfortably up there, and this level of player. I mean, you had Maxey 14th, but this level of player is harder for me to make an argument, or at least clear in my head that like they should be somewhere in this group of, I don't know what we're going to get to, 10 to 16 or 17 players or whatever it is here. So now it's my pick.
Yep.
Okay. Boy, you did not take my guy. My guy is still on the board, but that is also that.
I don't think I'm going to either.
It also makes this whole exercise extremely, extremely tricky. I think Boy, this is weird. There's two players I could take. I'm not
Mhm.
sure you're going to take either of them, which means that if I don't take one, then he'll go all the way down to like 13th, and then people on the internets get angry. They're like, why'd you take this guy 13th? And Cody, you know what? In 2025, I'm here to make people angry. That's what I'm.
Yes.
Yes, it's time for the heel turn. That's what's coming. I'm just stalling. I'm really
Mhm.
stalling. I am going to, why are you looking at me like that?
I'm just so excited about what's coming.
I am going to take with this next. Well, God, okay. Should I do it?
See, this is the whole thing. You come at me about the Barnes thing, and look at how much you're sweating over the next pick, and we're gonna tear this guy apart. I can just feel it, Ben.
No, this is too much. I'm going to take I will take Alperen Sengun next.
Okay. I was wondering.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you were gonna let him slip down a couple more spots, if you were gonna nab him here.
Yeah. No, I think it's once again, I think it's the safer play. I think he's demonstrated more sturdiness. His rim protection continues to improve. He's on a great defense. Now, just to be clear, we've talked about the Rockets before. If anybody didn't hear that episode, we're not saying Alperen Sengun is the center of the Rockets defense. It's more like they've built a great defense around him, but he has improved defensively, and he has things in the vertical challenge department at the end of plays that have been effective for them. And then offensively, the thing is, I mean, a couple years ago, we talked about the baby Jokic sort of copying this template. And Alpie's trying to shoot some threes occasionally this year. But the thing is, he's a much more contained offensive player. And it's hard sometimes. One night, it feels like, boy, he's a really important offensive player on a playoff level team, maybe a high playoff level team with that defense. The offense isn't that great, but the defense is there. And then there are other nights where he kind of gets lost in the shuffle, or they go small ball down the stretch. And that's the tough part to me in terms of pegging a player like that. We'll see how we feel when we get to the Sub All-Star podcast, but those players every year, you've got the guys that are just legitimate all-star candidates. They're right there. And I don't know. I don't know where I am on Alpie. He's in this range, but I feel like just he's a good player now, and that's the safe pick. That's kind of where I'm coming from.
I really like Alperen Sengun. I do. But in terms of like this particular archetype, like what is he? He's a center. He's an offensive first center. That's like he's good defensively. He can protect the rim, right? I don't know, where would you peg him on the passing continuum? He's like between good and great? I wouldn't quite
I think that's perfect.
Yeah.
I think that's perfect. I think he's between good and great. I was actually watching some Rockets defense film the other day, and there was a turnover or some kind of breakdown for the other team in the backcourt. It might, it was in that NBA Cup game against the Warriors. And all of a sudden they end up with the loose ball, and it's like a 3-on-2 around the basket. And one Rocket player who picked up the loose ball shuffles it to Sengun, like 3 feet away in the paint. And he's about to go up for a layup. And I don't even know why. I have to review the tape. He throws like an over the head, no look pass to a third player for a dunk. And he just busts that stuff out occasionally. So good elbow passer, good hitting cutters, very creative, good vision. I agree with you. There are things that make me hesitant to say it's great, but it's somewhere in that range. And that's valuable when you have a post game, when you have push shot. It would be really valuable if he could shoot threes, and I think play at 3 different levels and space the court. So yeah, he's, to me, starting to come into his prime. We'll see if there's more room for the ceiling to grow into, but this is the kind of player I expected him. I think Louis Scola was a comparison I made in the past, where you just have like a really good ball player. He might not be an all-star, but he's good enough in enough areas that he's good. But Cody, I'll pass back to you the question. Like, is this the archetype that you want over some of the other players in this category?
Well, I guess that's the thing, is when I see a guy like this, you bring up Louis Scola, baby Jokic, obviously. But the thing that I think selling those other guys short, like especially Jokic, is Sengun's not a dominant scorer, right? And we talk about not even in terms of like the shooting ability, but even around the rim. Like he's not like a wrecking guy, even though he's long and can vertically get up there pretty well. It's not like he's finishing in like the 99th percentile or even like the 90th percentile. I think he's actually pretty low in terms of field goal percentage, if I remember off the top of my head. But then you talk about he's experimented with taking threes, and that's just really not been a successful experiment. Even if you look at some of the mid-range, like long mid-range game, I don't even recall that being particularly good. Maybe it's like in the low 40s, which is like fine. I guess you can take that once in a while, but you're not going to live or die by that. But I guess that's the thing, is how much as an offensive hub can you contribute on the offensive end if you're a between good and great passer, but your scoring game is like not something the other team is going to be particularly scared about. Like if you just single coverage the guy the entire time, you're like, yeah, whatever, let's see what happens here. Between that and maybe some of the ways he can be schemed defensively, I don't know. Like those are a lot of warts that I feel like if you're building a team, you have to kind of really figure out the jigsaw space for him to slot into.
You're making me question this pick quite a bit.
Good. That's what I'm here for.
Are we allowed to undo picks?
Absolutely not.
Okay, then I think it's your pick.
If it makes you feel better, I had him 13th on my board.
No, I feel like we're in alignment, but I think conceptually talking through this, when you're splitting hairs with players like this, or when you're looking at players coming up in the early part of their aging curve and ascending and maturing, which is what's happening with a lot of these players that we're talking about, including Sengun, I think it helps to say, hey, this guy's a tall, big two-way forward, which means I know that in all kinds of playoff settings, he's going to be switchable. He's going to be versatile. As long as I think his shot holds up, this is going to be really valuable. In his case, I have a few more questions about the archetype when you drop it in different situations. And even in the postseason, I wonder in critical games, I said it earlier, there might be some games in a series where he's great, and there might be other games in the series where he's not closing because they go small and they have Jabari Smith at center. And that's just a weird thing to reconcile with the level of player that I think is still on the board.
I think that's also what's weird about the Rockets is I don't really think they know who their five guys are because they're so deep. And I think that's what makes me so interested to see them in the playoffs. But I mean, you look at the on-off numbers too, like their defensive rating is basically unchanged when he's on or off. So it's not like you can say, oh, they're so good defensively because Tari Eason comes in and just wrecks people. It's like, no. Those Sengun lineups actually look pretty good defensively as well. So I don't know. I think he's an interesting player where maybe I'm lower on his offense than consensus, but also maybe a little higher on his defense than consensus. And for a non-spacing big like that, I'm not sure where that lands you. So I think that's just ultimately where I am with him.
Cody, this is why I love doing the show live for members. You can sign up on our memberships on YouTube. There's a comment here from the audience from Caragor 101 saying Sabonis is closer. I mean, Sabonis is a closer comp than Jokic when we talk about the archetype. And I think that's a really interesting thing to think about because you're talking about a non or reluctant three-point shooter with a elbow-based kind of space handoff two-man passing game and a post-power game. And if that's the case, and you look at Sabonis, like, how do we compare them defensively? Where are the strengths and weaknesses? But I do think that archetype we've seen with Sabonis has somewhat of a limitation on the ceiling and has certain things that can be exploited in the postseason. So, yeah, I can't undo my pick, but I think I might slot him below a couple of the players we're going to take now that we've talked it out.
It is what it is. That's just what it is. Sometimes I don't know where I was going. No one wants to hear about my snowblower woes. So we got to stay on track. We're on a tight schedule right now, Ben. We're on the Polar Express and we got to get to where we're getting. Once again, you've left the guy that I've just been kind of hoping for you to draft this whole time. And I'm not going to take him. And because I have the most complicated player, I think. So we're going to skip him for right now. I'm going to go to somebody that not having a good season again. Maybe this is like the Tyrese Maxey sort of argument that you made, but I'm just going to take Tyrese Haliburton. I'm taking Tyrese Haliburton.
Yes. I was deciding between Sengun and Haliburton. I'm realizing that I wrote down a group of players and they're written in an order as language works. They can't all be on top of each other. And now I'm realizing I did not rank them this way. So why am I following this order? That's maybe why I didn't feel great about Alperen Sengun. This no undo thing is really torture. Really done myself in. The trolls are going to get me so bad.
It doesn't seem like the comments aren't flaming you, so I think you're pretty okay.
No, that's in here. Yes, the live audience there. Yes, I think it's okay here. I think Haliburton's a great pick. Just like Tyrese Maxey, he's having a bad start to the year. I think the much bigger question with Haliburton, if we're saying we're picking going forward for like a playoff scenario, is he just fried compared to where he was last year? He was amazing last year. He comes back after the hamstring injury, and he's just never been the same. And if anything, he almost looks a little worse than he did in the playoffs last year. I don't know if that's summer stuff or things that happened at the beginning of the year. I don't watch the Pacers closely enough to have a beat on his health, getting out of bed every morning and going to bed every night and what's going on there. But I will say, Cody, when you watch him, he's still very skilled. The shot hasn't been where it needs to be. The aggression, the speed, the step is not where it was in the past. The jump passing ballerina dance, the magician is gone. We've talked about it last year. I don't love the Pascal Siakam situation. They've lost some of their offensive magic. But with all that said, he's still one of the better offensive players in the game. He's still a really good offensive player.
I know. And that's the thing is what I've always really liked about him as a super high-end offensive talent is he gets the ball off. He gets off the ball really quickly, and he willingly does it. Like he's not like I need to have the ball to do this stuff. Like he catches it in the backcourt, and he's like kick it up ahead to somebody. Or he crosses half court. He has this like, oh, someone else do something. Then he maybe relocates and takes a shot or does something from there. But he's always constantly trying to get other people involved and not in a way where it's like, let me dance around and make sure I get like a perfect assist here. Right. So I always respected like that way of playing offense. And on top of that, like, I don't know, at his peak, he was maybe a top 5 passer in the NBA? Like at least top 10. I would say he was comfortably in the top 10, right? I'm not going to try and do that right now, but a guy that really can dime people up in a really solid variety of ways. I think he's held back in that department by his inability from getting to the rim as much as some of his contemporaries. Like obviously he's not like Ja Morant or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in terms of being able to get there, but with his passing chops without that part of the game, I think is extremely impressive. And man, he's still like, they're playing the 76ers recently. I don't even know what recently was, maybe like a week ago. And when he's aggressive with that 3-point shot and it's falling, he's super dangerous because he just pulls it from anywhere and so quickly, and he can just dial it in pretty well. I think the last couple of seasons, he's been under 40%, but the first couple seasons of his career, he was at least a 40% 3-point shooter. So I think he's a better 3-point shooter than he's been these last couple. And I don't know. I think he's going to get into form at some point, whether or not that's this season. I don't know. But I just think that the Hallie that was competing to be one of the best offensive players in the league is still there.
I don't know if he can ever get back to that, but even 80 or 90% is still very good. The 3-point shot, if you look at his 3-point numbers, because we have an interesting question from the audience about like how long could you have a sustained hot streak? Could you sometimes confuse a hot shooting run for someone's true, they shoot well for a year or two and you think, that's how they shoot. And then they don't shoot as well. And you go, they broke their shot. Something changed. In his case, I just think he's legitimately a very good shooter. I mean, all the indicators are there. Still 85, 86% from the free throw line. He was over 40% from 2021 to 2023, each of his first 3 seasons. And maybe that's the spirit of the question, because now he's back at like 35, 36%. I think it's reasonable to think that he could be somewhere in the middle there, right? Like he's not a high volume 41% 3-point shooter, and losing a little bit of value off that shot chips away at his value. But Cody, we have a board for Patreon subscribers, patreon.com/thinkingbasketball, where we look at the trends, the differences between 2024 and 2025. And if you pull up Tyrese Haliburton's player card, that thing is like all negative to the extreme. His offensive load has gone down 11 points. That's in the first percentile. That is like extreme levels of the league. His scoring is down 4 points. His efficiency is down 4 percentage points. His box creation has the biggest drop off of anyone in the league. The shot creation, he has the ball way less this year. One of the biggest changes in time of possession, a 7% decline in time of possession. All his impact numbers are way down. So yes, there's a little bit of a Tyrese Maxey thing in terms of the rough start to the year. But to me, it's a lower level of play. I mean, it sounds like you had Hallie above Maxey still, and I'm just wondering if Haliburton can get back close to where he was at the beginning of last season.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering that now. Like, I think if I did my board again, I'd probably have Maxey ahead of him now that we're kind of talking it through. Because even on the defensive end, like part of me is like, oh, well, Haliburton's this like big guard that can, but like, you watch some of the games, he's kind of a train wreck on defense. Like he's losing guys. I think like give him credit. I think he flies around sometimes, but it's not always like the most productive flying around defensively. You get him on a post up and there's basically no resistance. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe in retrospect, I should have had Maxey ahead of him, but doesn't matter because you took Maxey earlier.
Well, now it's time for me to make the pick you've all waited for.
Yeah,
I believe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I should have done this at 11. This would have been more fun. We'll do it now. We'll do it live.
Mm-hmm.
I want to take off a jacket and slam it on the desk every time I say that. And this time I really want to slam it on the desk and say, LaMelo Ball must be picked. We've gone too far. Should have taken LaMelo 11th. Obviously, we have the video on LaMelo Ball this week for members. It'll be released extremely shortly. No, hold on. If you're not a member, it will already have been released when you hear this podcast. Yes. How about that? So the LaMelo Ball video captures a lot of my thoughts about this crazy, unique, wild, chaotic, genius type talent. And there's all sorts of, he's playing, he might be playing the most extreme basketball we've ever seen. He has so many, when you look up things, you see things that you've never seen before. You're like, wait a second, who's shooting the most 3-pointers ever? Oh, it's LaMelo Ball. Okay. Well, who takes the most long 3-pointers ever? Well, it's LaMelo Ball by a landslide. He is also getting to the basket much more. He also turns the ball over all the time. He also, without a doubt, leads the league in crazy plays per 100 possessions. It's just absolutely spectacular. So I think that's your hesitation and why you didn't want to touch him in this draft. But right now, I mean, he's quite a talent. He's already quite a good player. But B, and I'm not going to give him credit for this, but B, I think if you could put him in the right environment, I think you can rein it in. I think there's a lot more to be had there. Yeah.
So I think he's like the equivalent of watching Uncut Gems, where you're like, watch the movie and you're like, this is undoubtedly a good movie, but am I enjoying this? And then like a moment happens, just like you're like gripping your couch, you're like leaning forward, you're like, oh my God, is this actually happening right now? And then the rest of it happens. You're just like tense and you finish and you're like, I need like a massage or like to stretch myself out or something. It's kind of how he plays basketball. He does stuff like the off the dribble bounce passes and the lobs. It's like 75 feet out. And he's like, oh, Brandon Miller, you can go get this, and just like throws it. And sometimes it works and it's on the dot. And sometimes he's like, 17 seconds on the shot clock. I should pull from 40 feet. And like the jump shot itself, like, I'm not sure what's going on. Like there's so much with him. I swear his layups, like I don't think his rim field goal percentage is very good. And I'm pretty sure most of it is him being like, but what if I look like Michael Jordan trying to avoid everyone in the air and I'll go like underneath with like this beautiful little reverse. I don't know, Ben. I don't know what to do with any of that. He's like an ABA player playing in the modern NBA.
I refuse to sit here and listen to this blasphemy. I will not take this. This is total blasphemy. I think with the right team, and a lot of people in the audience are echoing this, I think with the right team, you could see something quite special. What that is as a ceiling, because how good could he be defensively? He's probably a negative defender. Can you make it a passable, decent defender? He has some very interesting instincts. He and his brother, of course, are crazy quick for their size, and they just have that thing from the way they played growing up in their youth and their high school days. Everything is fast. Their vision is crazy. But even this year, I mean, the usage rate, the amount of shots that he takes versus some of the passes that he could make. And I think it's just because I'm not gonna call anybody out. Okay. After watching enough film for the LaMelo video, I believe there is a player on his team that he does not like passing to. Like, period. He will not pass to this player. And I just think if you put him on a team with good players, he's just out there hooking people up left and right. He is a good shooter. What would the percentage be if he wasn't averaging 33 feet per shot? Like his average shot distance is near half court. I don't know, but yeah.
How would you describe his defense?
I think it's erratic and sporadic right now. I think there are times when I see plays from him defensively and I go, okay, you can get some value back with your brain, with your quickness, with your basketball IQ. But then there are other times, I mean, don't forget, he's like a 6'7" guard who's not very strong. Mm-hmm. So you have a couple things working against you because you're bigger and it's harder to get around screens. And then when you're not very strong, you can get bullied in mismatches and on drives and switches and things like that. So I think he's starting from a negative place, in addition to the fact that when you look at his background, he was just never in a position where he's had to take defense seriously. And so he's climbing an uphill battle, I think, to tread water defensively.
I think I don't want you to misinterpret the Uncut Gems monologue. It's not meant to be pejorative. It's a good movie. Like Kevin Garnett, like he's just really dialed up to Kevin Garnett, you know. But I recognize Cody, there's a good player, Ben. I recognize it. It's just I don't know.
Cody, that movie is a heart attack. That movie. I'm very happy if anyone listening loves that movie. That's great. I love that for you. I love that you were able to get through it. If you were in some type of hospital setting and you wanted to give people heart attacks, I think putting that movie on would do the trick. I think if I taught a film class, it would be the all-time example of like let the movie breathe for 2 seconds. There's a scene where he like goes over to the house and it looks like someone's not going to be yelling at someone else and it's going to be calm. Nope. 3 seconds later, we have another fire to put out. It's 2.5 straight hours of a walking heart attack, and that is not Lamelo. Lamelo is the peak form of entertainment and creativity on the basketball floor. Your pick.
I'll just say a nice thing. I do think he's kind of a bear to defend because he likes moving off ball and he's quick off ball. And something he likes doing off ball is he catches it and immediately he's like, lob, someone's going to be there. And I just think that's no, I'm saying it's a good thing. I'm saying that's very hard to defend.
But I'm saying this is a great example of he never cuts to the basket off ball. So how easy is it to take like a brain like his who has all these instincts and be like, hey, you don't have to constantly be resetting at the top for pick and roll or a 30-foot three. You can also start cutting into that open space, backdooring people. I just think there's a lot there to continue to unlock. But the sort of the JV situation that's going on in Charlotte, to no one's fault. It's just a rebuilding team. That's everyone's young. I just don't think it's the right environment for him.
So do you want, just for posterity's sake, I'm going to give you a chance for a mulligan here. Do you want to just flip your Sengun and Lamelo picks and say you picked Lamelo 11th and say you picked Sengun 13th?
Are you telling me I'm allowed to do that?
Yeah, do it. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't affect my picks at all, so I say do it if you want.
Okay. Maybe we should poll the audience while they're here and see if I can do that. Well, in the meantime, why don't you pick? We're on the 14th pick. And it's back to you. And I'm just this is the Cody. I'm so glad you have this pick. This is spectacular.
As far as I'm concerned, Ben, there's one guy left that some people are really crowing for us to pick. And I'm here to tell you, Ben, that I'm not going to pick him. And I'm going to tell you right now that I'm picking somebody maybe higher than I should. But I had like 3 goals, and I was going to end up with this guy as one of those goals. Because with the 14th pick, I'm taking Jalen Johnson.
Yeah, that's what I thought was coming.
Absolutely.
That's what I thought was coming. It's a little too high for me, but also he's in this range. But also I kind of don't know what to do with Jalen Johnson from a value perspective because he's a little bit all over the place at everything. So I'm going to let you make your case.
He's just the definition of a jack of all trades. Like he might be the most jacks of all tradesiest player in the NBA. And I think it's not even average with some of it. I think some of the stuff like defensively, I feel like he's really disruptive and he's so big and strong that like you can slot him by the rim. He can switch onto a 5 and hold his own pretty well. He can cover like a help side rim protection and block a shot or at least affect a shot. So defensively, like I love the flexibility. I love that kind of thing, especially with the playoff team. The passing explosion, Ben, like he has improved so much in his career as a creator. And I'm not talking like, second side, he gets a ball after Trae Young dances and he makes like one. No, he's like running a pick and roll and he throws like a perfect pocket pass. I'm like, look at this guy doing a little bit of this. This is so very exciting, right? Athleticism, obviously. You get him out in transition and he's just ready to throw down on people. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I probably should, but I think that causes a little bit of slowdown. But I don't recall him being like a great shooter. Right. He's a good enough shooter. He can space the floor. But again, when you're sort of this forward position, that matters a little bit less to me if you're kind of in that 4, maybe micro ballish 5 type of spot, which I think he plays. So I don't know, Ben, like at this point in the draft, like if we're really thinking about trying to build a playoff team, he's like the archetype of the guy I want on a playoff team.
Yeah.
If he was better at all those things, if he wasn't, like you said, like, a little bit, I don't know what verbiage you used, but if he was better at these things, he'd be a top 10 player. Like he just would be a top 10 player in this discussion.
In this discussion, yeah, I agree.
In this discussion, yeah.
Yeah, he's 35% from downtown on moderate volume. So
Healthy. That's healthy.
I think a big question there is he on the sort of playoff Mendoza line? We've talked about 3-point shooting sort of starting to mirror batting average in baseball, where it's like everybody's going to get these attempts to some degree. So what category are you in? Are you a 230 hitter that can just scrape by, and the reason you're there is so you can steal bases and field and play your position like a Gold Glove winner? Cody, I'm using other sports metaphors, but just bear with me, right? That's Gold Glove is very good. That's when you're good at defense in baseball, okay, but your offense isn't that good. So in this case, do you get into a playoff series and like you're 34% in the regular season on some moderate volume, and teams go, yeah, we're going to probably kind of ignore you a little bit and make you take like 10 or 15 threes a game and see if you can beat us? Can he make those shots? I think that's a big question mark, but everything else you said, I think we're largely aligned here. He's just really dynamic. He's a really interesting player. He's one of these players that people describe the NBA as positionless, but it's not positionless from a functional standpoint at all. If anything, there's a ton of roles defined with the way basketball is played today, with the sets and the spacing and the movement and 2-man and 3-man action. And then you look at someone like Jalen Johnson and you're like, but actually, I don't even know where you fit in any of this. I do know I need someone to make an extra pass, you're really good. And in transition, you're really good. And if you end up attacking closeout, like you can handle the ball for your size and you can defend. He does all kinds of things, but he's still kind of a nebulous player in a sense. And, at least to me, he's just different.
You look at some of the on-off stuff, and I think when Trey's off, like his points per 75 is basically unchanged, and his true shooting percentage is significantly down. But again, at this point, you're looking for a guy that when you can slot him next to these other types of players, it's just additive, right? And the lineups with him and Trey are just better than the lineups without him and Trey's on the court. Like, because he can do some of the stopgap defensive stuff. He can fill some of the holes offensively. He's not a guy, again, going back to like the Scotty Barnes thing, I would never want him to be a primary. He's definitely not a secondary. Maybe he's even better off as like a third or fourth type of guy. But what he does at that level, if you have him as the third or fourth guy, I think he has some additive skills that other players just aren't going to have.
Well, to borrow some language I've used in the past, if you are an 03 or an 04, meaning your primary, your optimal role on a realistic championship type team is to be the fourth option, the fourth offensive option in 04, and you're like really good defensively, you're like a D2 or a D1. I think that's around this kind of level of player, like really good players that aren't going to be all-stars, but are, we're going to talk about them in the Sub All-Star podcast. They're going to have big contracts. They're going to have big moments. Sometimes they'll make the poster if you're talking about the big three or the big four or something like that. I think that's kind of what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Here's my question.
Yep.
Why did you take him over Jalen Suggs?
That is a really good question. But I think in terms of like, we're getting into this same level of valuation players, right? And where I think that Suggs brings a little bit more defensively. Okay, here's the complicated answer. Here's like the weird, in the weedsy, philosophical type of nonsense, right? I love Suggs. I love Jalen Suggs. I really do. Everyone should know this, right? But if you're at the guard position, I think his offense is such that if you put a different guard there, relatively speaking, I think he's taking a little bit more off the table than an equivalent type of player that Jalen Johnson is taking the spot of.
Yeah, I think that's a really compelling argument. And again, if we're splitting hairs at this level of player, ultimately we might have more of a sample size to be able to evaluate and split those hairs with a finer tooth comb and say, yeah, they're in the same range, but I prefer Johnson or Suggs clearly. But at this point in time, 25 games into this season, in this exercise, maybe it's a good tiebreaker. Maybe the audience is going to let me switch the pick for the same reason. And I should have Lamelo. So we'll put a Lamelo 11th.
Yep.
Sengun 13th, which is exactly how it would have played out. And then you pick Jalen Johnson 14th.
Yep.
And I guess 15th, I guess I'll take Suggs.
All right.
For the exact same things we just talked about, but a scaled down guard version. It is interesting because if you, there are so many players in the NBA right now who aren't traditional 6'2" point guards that can be your best offensive player.
Yep.
And so you're not always going like, oh, Suggs is replacing the 6'2". He's replacing Trae Young. He's replacing Kemba Walker. He's replacing Isaiah Thomas. He's replacing Tony Parker, and Steve Nash. He's competing with these little guards. It's like, no, not always. What's happening is the best player gets more reps, or the offense is built around them if they're a big man. And then you look at someone like Suggs, and now you can actually add defensively around your, like the Luka Doncic model. You could play Suggs next to Luka Doncic. So I kind of wonder, that's why I was asking you about him versus Jalen Johnson, because I know you love both players. I kind of wonder how much offense are you quote unquote losing as long as Suggs' three ball is pretty good and he's like a tertiary creator, like maybe as a backup. It gets dicey. It gets dicey in terms of how much offensive juice he has, but then he does give you, relative to so many other players in the sort of like 6'4" and under category. Is he even 6'4"? Do they list him at 6'5" now? I don't know. He just gives you so much defense at that position.
I was going to say, I think, like, if you were to talk about the list of guys that gives you more defense at the guard position in the league, like, who are you talking? Who's the guy in Boston, Ben? There's a really good defensive player that does a lot of stuff.
Derek White?
Yeah, there's another one. It's not him.
Jason Tatum, who probably should have. I read somewhere the other day that Jason Tatum should have made an all-defensive team at this point in his career. And I've never like nodded and made a, the question face emoji harder in my, I'm like, yes, that's right. But also, who would it be over? Because he's like competing with like Giannis and Victor Wembanyama and Rudy Gobert, but also like Jason Tatum's really good. Like full stop. When we look back historically on his career, if you're not starting with like extremely high level versatile defender, I think you're just missing the boat.
And when you get into the conversation there, it's like, do you rate Jason Tatum higher than Jaden McDaniels or Herb Jones? That's an entirely different conversation. But I take your Suggs. Suggs was 17 on my board, so like in the same range. I think at this point, like you could flip some of these guys around. So I love the pick of him at 15.
So it's back to you at number 16, and I think we're going to start running out of this group, and then it's just the end of this. It's just impossible. The end of this podcast. There's like 30 players you could pick from.
I'm just going to do it, Ben. I'm just going to do it. There's no point in not doing it at this point. I'm taking Cade Cunningham here.
I think that's the pick, Cody.
Yeah, I think it is.
I think that's absolutely the pick. Yeah.
Yeah. You want to talk about complicated thoughts?
I think your thoughts might even be more complicated than mine. So I'll let you go first.
I mean, he's a really good passer. I will give him that. I think his pick and roll reads are great. And I think that's obviously his best skill on offense. But for a guy that has the ball as much as he does, he just doesn't really have the burst to get himself good shots. He's not a good enough shooter to really rely on being a tough shot maker. So like the scoring game is just not what you want from somebody that has the ball that much. But again, like passing, I love passing. I love a guy that can pass that well. And I believe like maybe if you slot him next to other guys that have the ball a lot, maybe he could move. I'm not sure, Ben. I'm really not sure. But he's just a talent to the point where I'm like, at a certain point, you just got to like look at the guy and say, man, he's really good at some of these things. And you probably just want that on your team.
I apologize to everyone listening for Cody and I agreeing so much, but your first like sentence and a half or whatever, I just think that captured it perfectly. He doesn't have the burst. He doesn't have he's like half a level away in certain areas from being like a real star offensive player. He's half a level away. Now, with that said, I still think he's good. And I think it's really cool to watch because I think we're getting into the point in Cade's career where the shots improved a little bit. The confidence and the tempo are there. He's still a little too soft for me. Like there's too many times I watch him and somebody just takes the ball from him, or the ball handling is a little too loose, or he tries a move like he's hanging out with some IG trainer and the guy's like, just do this and then spin back and take your shot. And the defender's just like, I'm going to stuff your shot right back in your face. Like you're not open on that move. Try a different move. But you said it, the passing, the defense is better. The shooting is better. He's a professional athlete. I mean, he's a good athlete. He just needs to be a great athlete, I think, to be in like the superstar tier of player. And I would love, we said this for years, I would love to see him in a situation where he can be on a really good team and be the second or third or fourth guy or whatever it would be, because I think we've reached that point where he's like starting to comfortably become a really good NBA player.
I think the way that I described it to myself is it feels like he plays like Luka, but he's just not Luka.
Yes, this is the exact comment we're getting from the audience, right? If you look at this recent comment here, it's about like all of his reps being in this heliocentric mold, and how much does that influence our perception of him, and how much does that, like, that's not an ideal role necessarily for Cade moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't have much else to say. It's complicated. It's complicated.
Okay. Is it my pick now?
Now it's actually impossible. Like, I'm looking at the guys I have, and then I'm also looking at the list of 20 other guys that I don't have ranked here. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe you just throw a dart and pick a couple of them. So good luck.
Okay. It's surprising to me a little bit that we agree, in the sense that this is also where I look at the board and I'm just like, I have no idea. Maybe I should close my eyes and try to draft someone. Who is the best, the quote unquote best of these players left available? Can I talk out loud about a couple options? Is that crazy?
No, let's do it. Let's collaborative, Ben. This is not a competition.
Okay. So one option that is obviously there, but he hasn't played at all, he's played 3 games, is Emmanuel Quickly. Did you forget about him?
No, he just played 3 games, so I just didn't do anything.
Okay, so he's played 3 games. We've seen him at a level in the past that I would think warrants discussion of taking him at this point. He's also in a totally different situation in Toronto, but I do think Emmanuel Quickly is there and absolutely has to be discussed at this point. Then you have someone like Keegan Murray, okay? Mm-hmm. And he's just like solid, right? He can shoot threes. He's big. He defends. He doesn't get out of his lane too much. He's gotten a little better since he's come into the league at things that he needs to do in his responsibilities, like attacking closeouts and making really basic decisions. So he's just a solid player. Okay. So you can go in that direction. Then you can go in, you can be Cody and just, I'm sure Cody has an entire basement full of these. You can just go rim collector, right? You can just go downstairs. We know Cody has the little dolls. He's got the Derek Lively doll. He's got the Walker Kessler doll. We know, I know you have those downstairs, don't you?
Is this like a crucible moment? Like, are you being like, do you hold poppets in your house, Mr. Hodek?
I don't know. I wish I got that reference. I'm sorry. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know which direction to go here. I think a similar player to Keegan Murray would be someone like Jaden McDaniels from the defensive standpoint that we've talked about in the past. And I think, a guy we've given love to, who I'm going to stop saying names. How are you? Help me out here. Which direction do you think I should go in?
I mean, I have all these names down. When you said Keegan Murray like doesn't leave his lane, my first thought was, yeah, but it's a very skinny lane.
It's not super skinny. Come on.
He does not have much offensive juice. Like, he can shoot the ball a little bit. But.
Look, he's been, when he's out, the Kings just have like no option at the big forward position. He's your classic, big forward versatile player that you love so much that we've done.
I like Keegan Murray. I do. I just think there's you haven't hit on actually a couple of the guys I plan on taking next, so I'm interested about where you're going to go.
Well, boy, there's another player I kind of really want to take. Everyone knows you want to take Andrew Nembhard. So I'm not gonna touch Andrew Nembhard. I think I'm gonna do it. I think I'm gonna take Derek Lively. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that's the safe play.
I think it's a very safe pick. He's a guy that obviously looked very good in the finals run as a rookie, Ben. Like, that's not easy to do. And I know he's splitting time with Gafford out there, but when you're that developed as like a rim protector and rim runner as a rookie, that brings you a lot of value. Like, I think a lot of people look at those kinds of skills and like, oh, all you're doing is being tall and dunking, but like, it's actually kind of a skill to finish at the rim as well as he does and block the shots that he does. So I like that pick a lot.
Yeah, I mean, he's been in the league for a year and a third roughly. And in the minutes he's been on the court, if you look at the sort of scoring around the basket against Dallas when he plays versus the scoring around the basket when he doesn't, it's pretty good. He's not like a grade A plus, like, defensive player of the year kind of rim protector, but his numbers, especially when you include foul rates and things like that, are good. I think he's a big part of giving Dallas that defensive identity that makes them pop and sort of spirited that run to the finals last year. And I don't sneeze entirely at his lob finishing, because you kind of get like a Tyson Chandler archetype, Cody. And so, you can mock the narrowness of the lane, but when you shoot 75% from the floor and you offensive rebound and you don't do anything other than set picks and eat up possessions that way, it's not bad.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think when you have the rim protector, it kind of opens the door for a lot of different things you can do. Like, I think the 4 spot then becomes a little bit more complicated, but you can kind of go a little bit smaller and just put a lot of the defensive load on somebody like Lively instead. You can kind of go the heliocentric route. I think you get a lot of. I think rim protecting lob finishers are a little bit more flexible than they get credit for.
Yeah. And some people in the audience pointing out that, he's in a great situation with Luka. But for me, when I size something like this up, I say, okay, if it's 1995 and there's one Luka Doncic in the league, then Lively struck gold, right?
Yeah.
But how many other skilled guards and skilled playmakers can access that vertical dimension with him now compared to 10, even 10 years ago? I think it's a good number, right? Yeah. I don't think Luka's the only guy he could play with. I think we've drafted some players in this draft that could unlock that kind of vertical lob dimension, from Trae Young to LaMelo Ball to Tyrese Maxey, maybe, just like guys that can turn the corner and pick and roll. I'm suddenly blanking. Darius Garland. I think there's a good amount of them. I'm suddenly blanking on like who's good at passing basketball in NBA. It's helpful when you have a podcast.
You even think about like Rob Williams with the Celtics. Like, they didn't have a traditional heliocentric type of offense, but still his rim finishing and rim protection was like we talked about a lot those couple of years ago. It was the key to their turnaround defensively, essentially.
Yeah. And I think Rob was probably, when he was healthy back then, a better shot blocker, rim protector. But Lively's, he's pretty close. He's pretty good. And again, I will reemphasize here that I think for me, this is a safe pick, in the sense that I almost just drafted Keegan Murray, because I want players that I know can play in playoff scenarios and play a role and play them at a decently high level, versus, can I throw a name out there that I don't think is going to be picked?
Sure.
Okay, Brandon Miller. Brandon Miller, I really like Brandon Miller. I think he has a great skill set. I think he's a great talent. But much like Kevin Durant in like 2009 or something, when you're young and you're putting those things together, the difference between your value on when it's put together and not put together can be giant. Whereas when you're like a defensive player and you're trying to go from like a solid defensive player to a all D candidate, or you're a 3-and-D guy and you go from 35% to 40%, you add a little bit to your value, but sort of the nature and the shape of your game is the same. But with someone like Brandon Miller, it's like, if he can just click a couple skills upward that might naturally happen aging wise, now you have a really good offensive player. You might have a star type offensive player. But right now, where he is with none of those things going in defense, it's like, I don't think he's going to get drafted today.
No, he's a great shooter. He's got great athleticism. I think he has defensive potential, but yeah, it's not put together in a way. I thought about him. I think he's an interesting player, but like you said, when it's all put together, I think that skyrockets his value quite a bit.
Do you see the point though? I'm hopefully I'm making this clear, that some players, as they go up the aging curve, like a big scorer like that, when a big scorer isn't quite working, you don't go, oh, I'd rather have him over some like Derek White playoff guy. You want that guy because he's just going to be so good at so many other things across the board.
Yes.
But when the big scorer becomes one of the better big scorers, then all of a sudden the value flips dramatically.
Yes, I think there's maybe a couple of guys like that we'll see if
there are a couple of guys, we'll see if they get picked. But I'm just saying, for me, I'll stick for now. Let's see where we go next. I'm interested in who you take. I'm feeling safe with a skill set that is let's say less elastic, less flexible.
You said that's at 17, right?
17. So you're up at 18.
All right, here's a pull. I think I've brought him up before. I like my big guys that have a bunch of weird skills. I'm taking Santi Aldama here.
Whoa!
Absolutely.
Whoa! I didn't even write Santi Aldama down. Wow. Okay.
What's not to love about a dude that's like 6'10", like legitimately, The shooting, you don't necessarily. He's not a great shooter, but
Yeah.
again, like I said, when you're a big like that, it doesn't bother me as much because the passing. He's a really interesting passer. Defensively, very flexible defensively, can switch around. You can't necessarily hunt him. And again, with that size, you just get a little bit of juice near the rim, just a little bit of juice. And we've seen him working with this really deep Grizzlies squad, right? So we already see him working on a team that's got a lot of interesting potential. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't write down a lot for him because I just love this guy.
This is a reach to me, Cody.
Nope.
I think this is our first time.
Why?
We're going to really diverge.
What do you not believe in about Aldama?
Well, I think the first question is he a starter level player on a high level team? I think that's my first question. Doesn't shoot well. He's not going to put a ton of pressure on the basket or have individual scoring. I like him as an extra passer quite a bit. I think he's a great athlete. I think he's a good defender. But what are you going to start him as a 5? You going to start him as a stretch 5?
Extremely good at finishing at the rim. Not necessarily he's saying he's creating them himself. His rim protection numbers look great for a guy that's not necessarily a center. Good enough shooter. Like, I don't know if he hits the Mendoza line like you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Passing chops. Like, I think comparatively to other people his size with some of those other skills, I think he's a little bit above average there. It's just a lot of really interesting things in a very big body in a league now where you want to have like a bunch of really big guys that have a lot of talent, right? Like, I'm not saying he's Jalen Johnson, but like, he's at least touching on some of the same skills that he has. Maybe even a more interesting extra passer. Like, I don't think he has the on-ball juice that Jalen has, but I think the extra passing is really interesting.
Well, I think the lack of ball handling is a big deal because I think the lack of ball handling is what prevents him from being a bigger danger as a scoring threat with the ball. But also, as we've seen, just having ball handling as a skill allows you to play a different way with your bigs. And I go back to what I just asked. Is he a 5? Is he a 4? Is he starting?
I love that.
Well,
okay, let me ask you this then. You just said this whole thing about ball handling. Like, is Keegan Murray a better ball handler than him?
Probably, yeah.
I don't know if I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
I think we have a disagreement. So I think that's maybe where it is. Like, I think Keegan Murray is a guy that feels a little bit more limited offensively. And I just love getting as much passing as possible. And I think we can squeeze that more out of a big man. It's all the more valuable.
If you were to rank the Grizzlies players, when would you get to Santi Aldama?
If I were to rank them?
No, if you're just lining up like the importance of the Grizzlies players, when do you get to Santi Aldama? Is he the 4th, 5th, 6th, 8th?
Ja, Jaren, Bane. Who else is even on the team? Like, are you asking, like, I'm taking Laravia or like Scotty Pippen Jr.?
Marcus Smart's on the team. Jalen Wells starts. Jake Laravia is playing a lot of minutes.
Well, I'm not going to show my hand right now, but let's just say that, like, he's not the only Grizzly that I might want to discuss before the end of the evening.
Okay. I'm asking because I'm nervous that you're giving Santi the Grizzly boost, the Jenkins jump, if you will.
Wait, I'm giving a guy a boost for being able to exist in a very good team with other good players? I think that's a good thing.
I think the system and the coaching makes a lot of those players look better and succeed compared to just on a random team.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's my hunch here. Okay. Now I'm not wavering. Santi Aldama at 18th. I think this might be the most surprising pick we've ever had.
Good.
Yeah, doing this show. Good. This is I now I'm just right back in the same spot. Right back in the exact same spot. I think if you're going to take Santi Aldama 18th, I'm going to take Emmanuel Quickly 19th. And we don't even have to talk about it because he hasn't played. It's just go back to last year when he was traded. Yes, you have a question.
When did we have a whole segment on him? Was that 3 years ago or like 3 months ago?
That was last year.
We really were on the Quickly train for a period. Like, I think we were like very much on record being like the Raptors won that trade.
The Raptors won that. Who was in that?
Maybe
trade?
I shouldn't speak for both of us. That was the
OG Anunoby trade.
OG I'm confused now.
Yeah,
Who
I
ended
don't
up where?
remember saying the Raptors clearly won that trade. I mean, I might have, but
Well, I did, and if I
Okay.
did, then everyone thinks that you also said
well,
it.
yes,
So
don't out yourself and then lump me back into your.
I'm roping you.
You
into it.
roped me in the first time. Now you're roping me in again. Your pick.
Nothing about quickly. It's
No,
because he's played 3 games. He's played. 3
I want to
games.
know where you're going now at this point with the. Look, these last few picks are always the craziest. We're always throwing flyers at the wall. But Santi at 18th, you got like 4 more picks left, my man. Where are we going?
I know. Dude, this is now. I'm afraid you're gonna. Now I'm feeling a little bit gun shy here. You're gonna judge this next pick so much, but I gotta follow my heart, Ben. Like at this, we talked about it. It's so impossible. I'm following my heart, Ben. At wait, what pick is this? Is it 20?
This is 20, yeah.
Ben, oh my God, there's actually. Let me really think about this one for a second.
Have I thrown you off now?
Oh, you did.
This is amazing.
Christ.
I mean, I feel like I listed a bunch of names, and you were just like, don't even worry about those names. I got Santi Aldama coming, and now who's next?
Oh, I don't
Who's
regret
next?
Aldama at all.
Okay.
So 18. So if I have, I'm actually gonna have to vamp for a second because I have a lot of names here.
You need to stall.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I love that guy.
Okay. Can I ask you something in terms of stalling?
Sure.
Are you considering picking Walker Kessler?
I wasn't.
Okay, interesting. So that archetype is not good enough to make whatever the bottom cutoff of these players is for you.
I don't know. I don't want to make that big of a proclamation. Like he's a good rim protector, but I don't know. There's just something. The magic seems to be gone after the rookie season.
The magic is gone.
The spark isn't there anymore.
I think his rim protection numbers are still where they were last year. I think or 2 years ago, whatever. I think they've been great his whole career. But maybe that's because John Collins is the alternative, or Lauri Markkanen is the alternative center. I don't know. I think I've stalled for you long enough, Cody. It's time for you to rip this.
You know what? I don't care. I'm speaking my truth. I'm taking Scotty Pippen Jr.
What is happening? What is going on?
We're dipping back into the well of the Grizzlies.
No.
So it's no, absolutely not. Let me tell you.
This is Grizzly boost. This is a Grizzly boost.
You bring up your whole thing where it's like, oh, is he a starter? Is he a bench guy? Maybe these guys are just super 6 men, right? Have you thought of that? Like at this point in the game, like you bring a guy off the bench that can do a bunch of things. Like Scotty Pippen Jr. is a guard that can play some tenacious little defense. Like he's just eating people's lunch sometimes. He's got an interesting, like gets himself into the lane, give a little bit of a shimmy, like short little. He's got a fun little bucket of tricks out there. And I'm watching him, and every time I'm watching, I'm not like, wow, look at this beautiful set to get Scotty Pippen Jr. No, he's just out there freestyling and doing his thing. And I could have taken him over Aldama, and I would have been okay with it. But I'm sorry, Ben. I think these Grizzlies guys are good. Like
you know what's happening right now, Cody?
What?
You're getting me in trouble. I'm gonna be credited with this series of Grizzlies bench players going over. There's probably like 10 fan bases listening right now who are like, you didn't take our young star player? Like, how could you take Scotty Pippen Jr. over Jaden Ivey or whatever? Yeah, I'm just.
Wait, do you think that Jaden Ivey?
No, I'm just saying that's the kind of fan mail.
Wait, do you want me to pick looking forward to how people are going to respond, or do you want me to pick using the eye that we matched up with in the first 16
You have to pick with your heart. I think you're giving everyone's the Jenkins jump. I think that's what's happening here.
I think I have an eye, Ben. That's a revolution right here. Who's your pick? You show me who to pick. You show me who to pick.
Well, you already scoffed. You scoffed at Keegan Murray.
Well, if you don't take Laravia, maybe I'll just take Laravia next.
I'm not taking Laravia. I hate to break this to you and break your heart, but I do not have Grizzlies on my board. We've already used all of the Grizzlies. Are you going to pick another Grizzly player?
He's on my list.
Okay. Is it 21?
Yep.
Okay. If you get to do things like this, picking Scotty Pippen Jr., who's in the G League last year. Oh my God. Okay, can I ask you a question? I would like to stall, but I would like to ask you a serious question. Why did you not pick Trey Murphy?
Maybe it's the opposite of the Grizzlies boost. Maybe it's the Pelicans plummet. Perhaps it's something like that. He missed a good chunk of time. I just don't know. I was very high on Trey Murphy. Like, I think when I picked him last year, you were like, that's way too high for Trey Murphy. So maybe I just haven't seen enough Pelicans. Maybe that's my bad response.
Okay. I think if you're going to do that, I think I would like to take, I'm going to stick with this like archetype of players that I think are just good playoff players and they're going to stay on the floor defensively, or they might be really, really good defensively and they can do other things like fairly well. I really, do I have to pick? Can I pass it back to you and we can see if you can take more Grizzlies?
I'll take Jake LaRavia for you.
this is wild. This is wild. I'll tell you who I really want to pick. I really want to pick Cason Wallace. That's who I really want to pick.
Ooh, yeah. I was wondering if this was going to happen.
I really want to pick Cason Wallace, but then I look at Cason Wallace, and then you have all these other defensive players. You have Jaden McDaniels, who's a really good defensive player. You have the Thompson twins, who are obviously incredible defensive players, and I'm just trying to figure out like which of those sort of players do I want the most? I think yes. You have a thought, please.
Oh no, I don't. I'm just thinking.
Okay, Cason Wallace is a 39% career 3-point shooter, but he's only shooting 30% to start the year. And he's not a high volume 3-point shooter, and I just kind of feel like if he could make more threes, he would be here. I don't know. Is Jaden McDaniels a safer pick? I don't know. This happens every year. I'm going to pick a guy. I'll take Jaden McDaniels. How about that?
See, at the end of the day, I have conviction, Ben. Like,
no,
I believe in my stances.
I have the opposite.
Who did you pick? Jaden McDaniels?
No, I don't want to pick Jaden McDaniels. You know what? We're going to do. How about this? How about we do conviction? Okay, you're going to pick with conviction. I am going to jump on the conviction train.
Thank you.
Are you ready?
Yep.
I mean, I'm not, but we'll do it anyway. I'm going to pick Denny Avdia.
Ooh, okay. I was wondering, what's going on this year?
I mean, I don't know. This just doesn't. Who knows? I don't know.
He's kind of terrible. He's relegated to the bench.
I don't know. I don't know who to pick.
The Trailblazer tumble.
I don't know.
So you're taking Denny?
No, I don't like anybody. I'm going to take Keegan Murray. How about that? Yes,
thank you.
I'm going to take Keegan Murray.
I would say if you didn't, I was probably just going to snatch him.
No, I'm going to take Keegan Murray. Your pick.
Okay, that's good. Okay. Do you want to say anything else? We talk enough about Keegan Murray.
I think we've talked enough about Keegan Murray. As also, we've reached the end where we need to quickly trickle out the door without anyone knowing. We've just reached the impossible part of the show where I think unless you take another Grizzly, you're just going to take a young player du jour who's playing very well right now and kind of has a big groundswell of support. I think that's where we're headed. Yeah,
this is where I thrive, Ben.
You do thrive in this area. That's true. Yeah,
this is it. Okay, so if this is the 22nd pick, so it means I'm going to
get
have one more pick. Oh
yeah.
Man,
yeah.
I'm going to take Christian Braun.
Okay.
The dude shooting 40% from three. The numbers when Jokic is off the court, they look pretty solid. Like he's not completely dependent on him, right? Like I was wondering if this is like a Sean Marion, Steve Nash thing where it completely plummets, but not saying that Marion completely plummets. He was just fine on his own without Nash. Just Nash elevated him so much. But when Jokic is out there, like he is so in sync with him. Like he just knows when to cut. And he's such a devastatingly strong athlete that like he can cut and take off. And just like if you're in his way, he's just going to yam it on you. He's an interesting defensive player. That's not me saying that I think he's a great or even like a really good defensive player, but he's strong. Like I said, he's athletic. He can switch around a little bit. He's active. I forgot who they were playing. It was a big game, but like, I think I sent you the clip where he dives. Maybe the Warriors? Yeah, because Steve Kerr's like, he called the timeout, but there was like a loose ball and he just like full out, I'm talking FIFA World Cup, like diving. I'm a goalkeeper out there sort of thing. And when you get to the playoffs, you just need people that are going to be energy monsters out there. So, Christian Braun.
Okay, I'm going to one up you.
Okay,
I should have taken this person last pick.
So you're not going to lambast me? Do you like the Braun pick?
No, I didn't. It's we're all over the place here. Brown's on my board.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
I wouldn't draft him, but he's on my board. Yeah. Can I ask you one more question before I pick with great conviction?
Sure.
How do you feel about Kobe White?
Yeah, I'm Kobe White curious.
He's spunky, right?
Yeah, he's very spunky. He gets
Okay, so
he just makes shots.
So if Kobe White were on the Grizzlies,
okay.
Do you think he would play over Scottie Pippen Jr.? That's my question.
No.
No, really?
No, I don't.
No.
Wow. Pippen Jr. is probably a better passer and definitely a better defender.
He's definitely a better defender. I think that might be the only.
Not passing. I think he's comfortably a worse passer than Pippen.
Okay, I'm gonna pick.
Yep.
This show always goes off the rails at this point. It's just. Well, I don't know why we do this. We should remind me next year to stop it at 50. We're going to do the 15 under 15. That doesn't make any sense. 15 under 25. I'm going to, Cody, I'm going to throw all caution to the wind with this pick because we have to wrap up the show.
Yes, we do.
I am going to take Amen and Asar Thompson together. The twins, they're the same. They're going together.
Okay.
Used to separate them.
I was going to take Amen next. He was going to be my next pick.
Yeah. I think the only concern really is this thing where like you have a guy that can't shoot at all in the playoffs and he's totally ignored. But I also think he kind of needs to be a center and he kind of needs to be in certain lineups and he can cut and pass and play in transition and he's just a wrecking ball defensively. So.
Yeah. I love the Thompson twins. They're sorry, I was really thinking about the next pick. We've talked about the Thompsons enough. I think when the Rockets episode, we really waxed poetic. All right, so this is my last actual pick. And this is really tough.
What do you mean by your actual pick? What happens after?
Well, the 25th, I thought we decide together.
Okay, thank you. That makes me feel better. That's great.
I like that. Oh, I kind of want to really go against for my final pick, but I'm just going to go against type here. I'm going to take somebody that no one is expecting. You're not expecting it. This is way
another
off
Grizzly.
I'm going to take a guy whose role on my playoff team is I need you to be a microwave scorer.
Microwave scorer?
Yep.
Whoa. Does he play in Houston?
Let me double check his age. Let me double check his age real quick. Because that would be embarrassing if I picked somebody that was
he play in Houston?
He's definitely. I'm taking Cam Thomas.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Microwave scorer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he is a microwave scorer.
I think he's less of a black hole than last year. I'm not saying he's a good passer, but he can pass the ball sometimes. He's a mess defensively, but the dude can get some buckets. And sometimes you just need to get a bucket or two. And I think in that role, he's quite good.
So the last player we get to decide together.
Yeah, this is like a team.
I believe I've mentioned all the. First of all, I'm stunned you didn't take Dyson Daniels. I'm just totally stunned.
I thought I actually have him 20th on my board, and I just decided to freestyle Ben.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Was he above the Grizzlies or below the Grizzlies?
He was below Aldama and Pippen, but above LaRavia.
Oh, so LaRavia was in play. You weren't joking about that.
Oh, no, he was in play. He was totally in play.
This is amazing. All right, so I think on the last pick, yes, what? I thought you were going to take Jalen Green. I thought you were going to take Jalen Green there for a second. I would have been surprised that you took Jalen Green, but I thought that's what was coming. And then there's another kind of microwave scorer player that we haven't mentioned out of all the names that we've bounced around. We've been bandying about here. I love that expression, bandying about. Jared McCain from the Philadelphia 76ers.
Yeah.
Who's a rookie. So maybe he's a little too, maybe he's a rookie. He's not quite there yet. So what direction do you want to go? Oh, there's one more name I would consider here that we haven't said, but you tell me what direction you want to go in.
Can I throw a curveball?
Please.
I think we end with our heart, like both of us just holding our hearts together. Bilal Coulibaly.
I don't think he's there yet.
In our hearts, though. He's definitely there.
Yeah, well, yes. In our hearts, he's there. Absolutely. Absolutely. I have to ask you another question because it was brought up in the audience comments. Why did you never take Andrew Nembhard? Everyone thinks you love Andrew Nembhard, myself
Yeah,
included.
I do like Andrew Nembhard. It's just I don't know. It's tough at this level. Like I just haven't been like blown away. I don't know what else to say.
Okay.
That's not a
I
great
don't want to.
answer, but we're not
I don't want to
recording.
open this can of worms at this 11th hour because we have to get out of here. But, um, there's a player who I think has a superpower.
Oh,
Who?
yeah.
Yes.
Can I say
yes.
it? Is it
Sure.
Jonathan Kuminga?
It's Jonathan Kuminga. Yes.
Yeah.
Jonathan Kuminga has a superpower, right? The ability
Absolutely.
to get to the basket and eat up space is at the elite level, just the absolute elite level. And yet he also has a lot of things that are left to be desired or skills to continue to work on. He's not a great shooter and the decision making is not great. But if you can put him in a situation where he's in transition or in isolation, like it's really phenomenal. And to the point where when he's out there in the fourth quarter in big moments in Warriors games that are close and he gets the ball in one of those moments, like in that exact moment, I'm like, that's a bucket or a foul. They're good on that, but the possession's over. The possession is over when he gets it. That's a true, like, actual basketball superpower. But then he has all these other things that offset it to some degree. I don't know. If we're deciding, we just got to pick somebody. Go throw it at the wall.
What about RJ Barrett? Have you thought about him at all?
I have quite a bit, and after watching some Toronto, I am not comfortable picking RJ Barrett here. No. Yeah.
I'm kind of leaning the Kuminga pick.
Let's do Kuminga. Let's do it. It's weird in the sense that I don't think he can be like your traditional 38 minutes a game. He's locked in as your like fourth starter or whatever. You're good to go on an elite playoff team. But if you use him the right way, I mean, we already saw Golden State in 2022 when he was 19 use like a baby version in like limited minutes. And now this team is actually, I think, as I said earlier, in moments really benefiting from that superpower that he has. It's impossible to pick, but we'll take Kuminga.
I think last year Podziemski would have been interesting, but the efficiency is just wild, man.
Yes.
But I like the other stuff.
To support us, patreon.com/thinkingbasketball. We've added a everything tier there, so you can get all our extra video content this year, our great game series, all that stuff in one tier, along with the stats, along with everything at Patreon. Or you can just sign up on YouTube just for the videos if you want. And you get this podcast live, and you get to participate in the lively audience that we've had today. They've had a lot of commentary about our backgrounds, Cody, especially mine. Yes, especially my background. How'd you feel this went?
I have to figure out how to jump into this chat. It says join the chat, but I'm afraid to press it because I think it's going to close out the window. But
you don't want to do that. Yeah,
I don't know. There's a lot going on in this chat that I kind of want to respond to, but you know what? That's okay. I like this group. This is a lively group. It
is a lively group. I think you've set me up for a lot of messages in this episode. Everyone outside of Memphis will be sending me some kind of fan mail. You're sticking to it.
I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to like find your home and walk and be like, "Thank you for letting the truth come out, Ben. Thank you for letting the voice of reason come out on your platform." Like that's actually what's going to happen here.
I'm surprised you restrained yourself from picking Anthony Black, because I believe you had all the magic in part one, and I was waiting for another Orlando Magic player to be picked. Yeah, and if we're making, what'd you say?
That would have been a good pick.
Yeah. When you said you were going to throw a curveball, I actually thought you were going to take Kamara and just go like, I love wrecking ball defensive players. But this group that we discussed that we kind of were like getting hung up on, I mean, they can all go in different directions. They're all, when you get to like the 75th to 125th best player in the league, they're all kind of similar. And maybe it depends on where they're at. And of course, we're doing it 30 games into the season, and these are young players, and we don't know. So I think that's it for this one. That was quite a journey. Thanks for listening along as always, and wherever you are. Hope you're having a great day.